I got a little wisdom for your ass today. Preach balance, provoke thought, promote open-mindedness. Wisdom is your perspective on life, your sense of balance. What if we can magnify our own lens of perception? Bob Marley said wisdom is greater than silver and gold. That's what I'm about. Seek wisdom, develop oneself, attack life, and get it. I'm the wisdom dropper. Hello everybody, welcome to the Wisdom Dropper podcast. My name's Daniel Bronze, and I have a little wisdom for your ass today. It is episode number 3, and the topic today is preach balance. This is one of the cornerstone principles of this podcast. It's something that is very important to me and something I think about a lot. And my journey to kind of develop and understand this principle has been a tricky one, but it has definitely been the most rewarding one. And I'll talk a little bit about my little journey and understanding and philosophy of this principle. And another reason I wanted to talk about this and why it's a big part of this podcast is, family is a huge, important factor in my life. I came from a big family. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, and I grew up with a very tight family unit, and I was very blessed. I know a lot of people aren't lucky and don't get to have that strong family unit in their lives, and it's something that I've taken on and want to develop and have in my own family. And that's why balance is such a huge principle for me and something I'm excited to talk about today. And I've also noticed a lot of entrepreneurs don't really talk about balance a whole lot. People that I aspire to become like financially, or I look up to. And, even though they might be single or in a relationship without kids, I probably can't really relate too much if they were to talk about it. But then there are still some entrepreneurs, that do have families. And, when I hear them speak about balance, you get an idea, or you get a sense that, their family do sacrifice or do have to suffer in a way because of all this attention being put into these big dreams and these big goals. And I even listened to a podcast. It was 2 successful entrepreneurs in the fitness industry, and they were giving their thoughts on balance. And one of them said that he puts 3 months into his work and then 1 month into his family, and that works well for him. And then I just thought about it, wow, that's 75% of your time away from your family. And for me, my family is high up there on the priority list. But then I thought about the whole, idea about something's got to give. You can't reach this level of success without sacrificing other areas of your life. And I just realized, that's the wrong mentality to have or even think about in the first place. Anything's possible. You can do it your way. Find your own balance. Prioritize your own life. And see what happens. There's plenty of great successful people that have great successful families. And, that's why balance is such an important thing for me. And I'm excited to talk about. And my journey started pretty recently in terms of balance. I always thought about it, and it was always a part of my life, but I could never quite figure it out. And that's how this world is today. There's so much going on. The world is faster than ever, and we're juggling all these things, wearing all these different hats, and it's hard to kind of organize and structure our time properly and balance our lives. We get caught up in things that don't matter, other people's priorities and not our own. And when I developed and learnt this philosophy, it kind of changed my whole perspective. And that's what I want to share with you guys today. And it started about 18 months, maybe 2 years ago. I went into this thrift shop, this op shop. And I bought a couple of these $1 books. And one of the books that I bought was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People from Stephen R. Covey. and it was only $1. And I read that book. It took me a long time to read it. That's how I know it was a really important book for me, because there was so much notes and I was just trying to understand a lot of the principles inside it. But his philosophy on balance is something that really resonated with me and something that I've taken on board and made a key factor in my life. And I am going to, share this philosophy. And the main key phrase that really opened my eyes and kind of really changed my whole perception was a simple phrase, which was organize and execute around priorities. Because at the time, before that, I was doing well in a lot of areas of my life. We had just moved in to pretty much our dream house here in Papamoa. Business was going well. Even family, I was very, very active dad, and thought I was an amazing dad, still do. But there was one thing in my life that I couldn't figure out. And this might get a little bit personal now, but that was my relationship with my wife and my marriage. It was the one thing that I couldn't feel confident that, I didn't feel like I was progressing in that area. And I had to talk about this with my wife. I told her, I'm going to be talking about this a little bit. And she's like, what are you going to say? And I talked about, how we were struggling 2 years ago in our marriage. And, it wasn't huge. It wasn't really major things, but it was things that were an issue and a problem. And I accidentally kind of went down a little trip down memory lane. And those can be dangerous. So advice to any husbands out there, be careful when you go down that trip. And because, you were so selfish back then. I was like, okay, here we go. All right, let's rein it back a little bit. But the main takeaway from me sharing that little personal thing was I proactively made a decision to change. And that's what it was through this book that the light bulb switched. And I was like, okay, I need to make my marriage more of a priority in my life and structure it into my weekly routine. And that's what we have to do. We have to be honest and self-aware and look at an area in our life that we are struggling with. And if it is something that is important to your happiness and who you are as a person, then why not make it a priority on a weekly basis? And that's what I got from this book. So I started to do it and incorporate some of these things. And I decided to, proactively go out of my way and change the principle of balance in my life. And that's what you have to do. You have to kind of rank your priorities from what matters the most down to what matters the least. And so that's what I did. And I'll go through and talk about this a little bit. So I decided, actually, while I was reading this book, I decided to make my number one priority my self-development. And there is a awesome quote in the book that kind of explains my reason why. And it goes like this: the most important ingredient we put into any relationship is not what we say or do, but what we are. And, we have to work on ourselves first and try to be better. Well, that's what we have control of. Didn't really come out right, but we have control over ourselves, not anyone else. So if we can make ourselves better and it becomes who we are as a person, then the other priorities in our life will also be raised and grow and develop and become strengthened. And because, I was like, nah, my family is my number one priority. But this quote made me realize if I work on myself and make who I am better and stronger, I'll be a better husband and a better father. So that leads me to priority number 2. And that was my wife. Because I know husbands out there, straight up, this is the honest truth. Happy wife, happy life. You know, my wife is the only person that can alter the positive vibes in my life. You know, that reason alone made me realize I need to proactively do something about this and make my wife a priority and go out of my way to strengthen this area of my life, because it was the one thing that I was struggling with, and I had to make a few sacrifices. You know, I was selfish. I was focused on money. I was focused on my business. And then when I was at home, I kind of just wanted to watch sports. And I was spending way too much time watching sports when I could be doing more with my wife and making a constant effort there. So that was one weakness that I had, another weakness that I had, and I had to give up sports because, to be honest, you know, I love sports. I'm crazy sports fanatic, but it's really just a fun way to waste time. So I just had to manage that a bit better and restrict it and limit it to, you know, the big games and a little downtime when I had that time, free time. And then I also thought about, you know, my marriage as a number 2 priority on a deeper level. And that was this thought, and I'm going to provoke a little bit of thought here. I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it definitely made me think, and it changed the way I thought. And that was this simple quote: if I'm not a good husband, am I really a good father? Because, you know, being a husband and being a father are kind of intertwined. And I shared a Snapchat about this maybe 6 or 7 months ago, because it just made me think about it. I'm not talking about, you know, those relationships that are separated, because obviously there's different dynamic there. But, you know, if you're in a relationship, your kids are going to kind of see that relationship, and it's going to be in their subconscious when they grow up and find a partner and how their partner treats them. And my kids were kind of getting to an age where they were becoming more understanding and knew what was going on. And I realized I did not want them to see their mum and dad having these kind of fights. And so, you know, before they get old enough to understand. And just having that thought was massive for me. It changed my perception. And I was like, that's another reason I need to make my relationship with my wife better and stronger. And I'm talking about this a little bit too long now, because the main thing is about balance, and I'm kind of getting into a bit of a marriage podcast here. But yeah, that was huge for me. And then, you know, after that, it's my family and putting that quality time into my family. And then, you know, it was my business, structuring and setting goals around my business, and then my fitness, and then spirituality. And you also got to have time for fun. So these are some of the other priorities. There's also a creative dimension to your life, and making that a priority. And so I started to work a bit more on my guitar and my music. You know, just having a bit of balance and having another creative outlet is something that we should always try to incorporate into our lives. And that was how my philosophy on balance began, and what it still is today. And so that's what we all need to do individually. You know, we need to rank our priorities, set weekly goals, and implement them into our calendar. And here's another little quote from that book that resonated with me a lot when you're scheduling your priorities and putting them into your weekly calendar. And that is, the key is not to prioritize what's on your schedule, but to schedule your priorities. And that's the most important thing. What are our priorities? All right, this is when we're focusing on this priority. This is when we're focusing on that priority. And you put it into your weekly schedule. And I'm sure I'll talk about this a lot more in the future. And then every now and then, you know, we got to be flexible with this. Every now and then, there will come something that would need high importance and require lots of attention. And it could be a new business. It could be just something that's temporary that we really need to focus on, and that can kind of alter our priorities. And when something like this comes along, it's important to communicate and understand it's temporary and be self-aware when the things that matter most, that area in your life becomes affected. That's when we need to kind of, all right, my priorities are getting a little bit distorted here. I need to make a change. So there can still be a focus. And that's something I've thought about, Many entrepreneurs have found success. I've personally found success when we focus on one thing at a time. And that's what we need to still do. And our priorities can work around that. Just for an example, me working on this podcast, the side hustle, I had to schedule it and work on it on my day off. And then on the other day off, I couldn't do any work on it. That was date day with my wife. And then when the kids are home, I'm there, I'm present with them. And then if I want extra time to work on this podcast, I had to do it when they're asleep in my own time. So you just got to be mindful of that. And if you do really want something, there's time. There's plenty of hours in the day to find and work around these priorities. And I understand we are all in different places. My priorities are not your priorities. And this isn't a podcast for people that are married and have family and kids. If you are single, then making money your priority, or your fitness and your health. Make those two things your number one, number two priority. There's no specific rules. It's really just about looking in the mirror, figuring out what's most important to you at that time in your life. We're all in different stages in our lives, and we all have different levels of importance to different areas in our life. And it just comes down to being self-aware, being able to discern and judge wisely, then go at it every week and focus on that. And because that's what I did, and it's definitely worked for me, even though I had my family and my wife and myself as my top 3 priorities, things picked up from my business. Also, things picked up with my personal fitness and my other areas of life. It's because I was organized and set these weekly goals and planned them into my schedule. But I also believe that if you've got the things that matter most to you in order and they're in line, then everything else is easier and grows and develops more naturally, because the things that value the most of you are going great. It gives you confidence and it gives you momentum to progress in those other areas of your life also. So yeah, these are my thoughts on balance. This is my philosophy. Some of the things that I do, not perfect, still got a lot of things to work on. But these little things, these little thoughts on balance, this philosophy on balance has definitely made an impact on my life and helped me improve in different areas that I didn't really concentrate on or focus on previously. So to sum it all up, this episode, I hope we can try to organize the things that matter most in our lives, especially in this chaotic world that we live in. Rank our priorities, try to schedule them in, make time for them, and then just be self-aware in the areas that we might be struggling in. And we still got to make time, we still got to make room for big things that need our focus and need our attention, because they will have a greater impact on our lives. And just keep in mind that they're temporary, and it comes to communication with those that matter around you to try to make it through and get through some of those big things that need focus and that we need to do to accomplish some of our dreams and some of our goals. So yep, a lot to take in. a lot of stuff in that, but I'm here to preach balance. This is how I look at balance. We're all different. We all have to balance different things that matter most to us. It could be spirituality for some, it could be money, It could be our health and fitness. It could be anything. Music, whatever we want to accomplish. If that means more to us, then we got to make that a priority. And that is the episode for today. Get it. If you would like to follow my journey or connect with me online, check out my blog, www.wisdomdropper.com. I'm also on social media, Instagram @DanielBronze_, Facebook and Snapchat @TheWisdomDropper. Have a great week.